Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. So, up until now in the course, you've done some absolutely incredible work mastering the micro-level details of human nutrition. You are already familiar with the complex world of macros and micros. You know exactly how digestion breaks those components down, and you've meticulously mapped out those intricate metabolic pathways that turn our food into cellular energy. But today, today we get to take all of that foundational knowledge and literally scale it up. We're moving from cells to systems, taking everything you've learned and applying it to physical movement. Yep, we're finally diving into nutrition for fitness and sport.
Okay, here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start by defining movement and fitness, look at the systemic benefits of activity, discuss the American activity deficit, explore how environment impacts your activity, and finally, wrap up with the physical activity pyramid.
Section 1. Defining movement and fitness, the baseline definitions.
So before we can really analyze how the body fuels movement, we've got to establish some strict clinical definitions of what movement actually is in the realms of clinical nutrition and kinesiology. Being active isn't just a vague catch-all term, right? It's categorized very specifically by intent and result. Notice the explicit contrast between general physical activity and purposeful, planned exercise. Physical activity is incredibly broad. It's quite literally any movement resulting from the contraction of your skeletal muscles. Walking to the mailbox, sweeping the floor, standing up from your desk, that is all physical activity. But exercise is a specific subcategory. It's movement you deliberately plan and structure for a purpose. You lace up your running shoes with the goal of jogging 3 miles, or you hit the gym to lift weights for 45 minutes. Remember, all exercise is physical activity, but definitely not all physical activity is exercise.
Now, physical fitness is the measurable outcome of those previous two concepts working together. It's not an action, it's a state of being. Basically, it's defined as the measurable result, your actual ability to perform moderate to vigorous activities without getting excessively tired. If you've been putting in the work with structured exercise and consistent physical activity, your resulting level of physical fitness dictates just how much further, faster, or heavier you can go before that fatigue really sets in. Moving to Section 2, Systemic Benefits of Activity, the Physiological Payoff. Look, we all know moving our bodies is generally good for us, but let's look at exactly what happens across your entire biological system when you establish a baseline of fitness. Regular activity acts like this amazing systemic preventative medicine across all your major organ systems. It goes way beyond just fitting into your clothes bearer. Check out these interconnected benefits. It aids in weight control and improves overall body composition. Musculoskeletally, it increases muscle mass and strength while actually strengthening your bones and joint function. Cardiovascularly, it actively drops your blood pressure and improves your blood lipid profile. Metabolically, and hey, think back to those metabolic pathways you already know inside and out. It drastically improves your blood glucose regulation. And the mental and sleep impacts? Absolutely profound. It helps manage depression, reduces stress, improves self-image, and enhances sleep quality. It's literally a full-body cascade of positive upgrades. And beyond just daily well-being and general metabolic health, movement is honestly our primary defense against some serious heavy-hitting chronic conditions. By improving overall heart and vessel function, we actively ward off cardiovascular disease. By maintaining that tight glucose regulation we just talked about, we directly reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes. Consistent physical activity is even shown to lower the risk of certain types of cancer. For neurological health, it helps prevent Alzheimer's disease and might even protect the brain from changes associated with aging. And tying the whole shebang together, it boosts your overall immune health. It's for sure the most powerful, wide-spectrum preventative medicine we have access to.
Section 3. The American activity deficit, the sedentary reality.
Okay, so if the metabolic and systemic benefits are really this profound, if we know it literally defends us against cognitive decline, cancer, and heart disease, we've got to pivot and look at the behavioral reality in America today. Prepare yourself for this staggering statistic. Fewer than half of all American adults meet the absolute minimum recommendation of 150 minutes of physical activity per week. Just think about that for a second. 150 minutes. That's just 2.5 hours out of a 168-hour week. And yet, the majority of the population is falling short of the very baseline required to trigger those systemic health benefits we just went over. So what's going on here? Why is there such a massive disconnect between what we know we need and what we're actually doing?
Which brings us to Section 4, Environment and your activity. The built environment.
To really understand this deficit, we have to look outside the human body and examine our physical surroundings. You know, it's super easy to blame this physical activity deficit entirely on a lack of personal motivation,
But the reality of public health is way more complex. Willpower isn't everything. Our baseline activity levels are heavily dictated by what kinesiology and public health experts call the built environment. This is basically all the human-made resources around us: the buildings we live in and work in, the layout of the roads we travel, the accessibility of parks, and where the restaurants and grocery stores are located. These external factors unconsciously dictate how active a community naturally is on a day-to-day basis.
Consider how these environmental factors play out in real life. Take neighborhood safety and the physical distance to destinations. If your grocery store is 5 miles away down a massive, busy highway, you're going to drive, right? But if it's half a mile away down a quiet, shady street, you might just walk. Whether you live in a dense urban center or a spread-out rural area entirely shifts your daily movement patterns. And think about sidewalks. It's not just the presence of a sidewalk, but the overall aesthetic vibe of a neighborhood that either encourages or totally discourages people from getting outside and moving. Because these factors are so incredibly influential, improving community walkability is actively considered one of the most cost-effective strategies a city can implement to promote broad public health.
Finally, Section 5, the physical activity pyramid, a tiered approach to movement.
All right, now that we understand the clinical definitions, the vital health benefits, the unfortunate national deficit, and the environmental hurdles we face, let's look at the framework designed to help us actually hit those 150 minutes a week from the ground up. This pyramid represents a tiered approach to movement. At the absolute base, step 1, we have activities of daily living. This is your general physical activity, stuff like gardening, walking the dog, or raking leaves. The goal here is 30+ minutes of this on most days of the week. Moving up to step 2, we introduce structured aerobic exercise for 3 to 5 days a week. Think running, cycling, swimming, sustained rhythmic contractions of large muscle groups. Step 3 focuses on flexibility and strength about 2 to 3 days a week. This means static stretching and resistance exercises like push-ups or weightlifting to build that crucial muscular endurance and bone strength. And finally, at the very peak, step 4, we have sedentary activity. Sitting, driving TV. The whole idea of the pyramid is that this peak should only be engaged in occasionally, fully supported by that massive foundation of movement beneath it.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, we've laid out the why and how much of physical activity. You know the definitions, the physiology, and how the physical activity pyramid is structured. But remember your foundational knowledge of metabolic pathways and digestion? As you look towards your next module, which is going to cover specific physical activity guidelines, I really want to leave you with this provocative thought. Are you ready to dive into the specific nutritional requirements for fueling these radically different types of exercise? Because think about it. Fueling a slow, 30-minute dog walk requires a totally different metabolic response than fueling a high-intensity resistance training session. Keep that in the back of your mind as you move forward. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you in the next lesson.